Thank you for being interested in this presentation. My name is Pascale. I live in France, in Strasbourg, and really happy to be here. The reason I'm with SOFA actually is it came about a bit as a story too. I like stories. I was preparing a summer school with teachers on the topic of sociocracy, and we sent a tweet. And then someone retweeted, and that's how we actually got in contact through Twitter with Ted, and that was fantastic because since I've met extraordinary people in this community. I'm a social psychologist. I'm also a facilitator. I work a lot with teachers and teacher educators, and my most big interest, I would say, is in social justice and inclusion in education. So developing practices that allow for all children to raise their potential. Also, in terms of facilitating, I use a lot of collective intelligence activities, and democracy and participation are central to the practice. The topic I want to talk to you about today is how action research can help us with developing sociocratic practices in our environments. So I'm going now to share the screen, hoping that you will see the slide that's here. Do you see SOFA Conference 2018?
Looks
yeah?
Good, yes.
Okay, perfect, good. So an action research approach to sociocracy is the title, the best title I could find for what I would like to share with you. Actually, when I started working in sociocracy, I kind of meshed it with another approach that I had been taught and that had been brought to me by colleagues. I've been working with the Council of Europe for a long time, and we were working with teachers in reflective practices. But then at some point, a teacher from Croatia came, Branko Bognar, and he actually really engaged us in this new approach that is action research, which I think takes reflective practice a step further. So the process of action research is really a work that you're doing on yourself, in context, and with others. And so it's a generative process, meaning that the spiral you see here would be like the focus of the research, but every time you're moving on in your plan of action research, it's bringing you to other places to explore also. So it's really a generative process. If you're interested in this, Jane McNiff and Jack Whitehead wrote a very good book on action research. And in this process, mistakes are important. I think that's the something that you have to accept in action research. And so for some people, it might be a bit of a challenge because sometimes it can be a blow to your self-esteem or what you think you are. So what is emancipatory action research? It's living research. You research what you are experiencing. And the main aspect of emancipatory is that the values are at the center. So you're actually looking at what you're doing and you're looking at your values and you're asking yourself the question, to what extent are you living the values that you hold? So values, intention, and practices and results, what's going on in that duad. And of course, it's an approach that brings the heart and the emotion and the whole self together. So in the process of doing action research, you're actually questioning your identity. Here it's a professional action research, so it does a lot in thinking about what is my professional identity, but you can also do it in family. And so all types of identities you can work on with this. And in a spirit of Kaizen, so a spirit of improving what we do and doing it not alone, but with critical friends. Critical friends are absolutely essential to what we do. The place I was doing this in, so I'd like to explain a bit the context. We have been working together with educators for now 10 years, and we've created an online community. And we meet on this online community. So we have trainings face to face. And then when the training is over, instead of just disappearing, everyone in their own countries, because it's an international setting, we stay in touch on this platform. And so this is, from this platform, a core group of people created an NGO. And what I will be describing here is within the context of the transition of this NGO from classical association to a sociocratic organization. And so values identity, sociocracy, and having a feedback culture is what helped to do this transition. I just wanted to put this picture so you have an idea of the people we work with. Here you have a group of teachers from Lithuania, from Croatia, from Greece, from Germany, and they were working with their base group that they have called the Circle, for example. So we're using collective intelligence in everything we do. So the story of the transition, I'm going to use this spiral idea again. And as you can see, the spiral goes from a plan, and then acting and observing, reflecting, and then revising a plan, and observing and reflecting again. So you're going like this and in cycles. What I did for this action research is focus on sociocratic governance at Learn to Change, which is the association I was talking to you about. The values I wanted to work on was connection, horizontality, and authenticity. And the research questions I'm asking is, how democratic am I? And do I nurture power with, power within, power to, as opposed to power over? So one of the goals of transitioning was to reflect on how I'm dealing with issues of power. The data I wanted to gather to do this research was, first of all, survey some of my colleagues, friends, and family about what do they think about how I display a leadership style. The analysis of the meetings we were having in the association during the transition, and also conversations that we're having on this platform, the online community that I was talking to you about. And of course, diaries and critical friends are at the center of that. This is cycle 1, and you'll see cycle 2 later. So, for example, we're with the critical friends that participate in the action research with me are actually people that I met through SOFA. And we meet every week, once a week, and we have our diaries and we research our own action research, and we give each other feedback through Google Docs. So we have the diaries and we get feedback this way. And so here I'm explaining exactly what I just told you. I want to research my own leadership style and how I would like to transition from being someone in the group who's often jump-starting things and often playing like a mother role. And I really wanted to transition and to give the opportunity for others to have the power to do the work. So when I wrote this is the feedback I got from my critical friend. Okay, now I see why you're looking at sociocracy for this transition. And in the course of this first diary, my critical friend said that she found it a courageous position to do that, and learning by doing, by facilitating sociocracy and Learn to Change, and also investigating my own posture as a leader for this. What I did, so you remember the data I said I would gather. I also used the Cards for Democracy, which is cards that our association develops. They're for free, by the way. If you want to go on the site, you can download them. And these are for our teachers. So you see democratic teachers seek learners' feedback. Democratic teachers actively improve their teaching based on this feedback. They accept that everyone has the right to be different, or they give up some power in the classroom. I chose out of the 60 cards that we have, I chose these 5 cards as a reminder of what I was trying to achieve. I also took the results of the survey that I had sent. I sent it to 11 people. And these are the words that came out. I took then all the answers of the open questions, and this is the word roll. So these were okay words, actually. I was quite reassured to see that there were more words that connect with, power within, and power to. But also came in these words: selective, directive, manipulation, fast, provocative, which were more like an alarm clock for me, and things that were great because I could look into them to learn more about how, whether I'm democratic or not in my practice, and do I practice these values I was talking about. So these are power over words that I had to then look at. While this is going on, of course, the transition to sociocracy within the association is also going on, and we've created the general circle. Everyone is ready to create the different circles. So really, the action research is happening while the circles are being created, and it's a lot of activity at once. This is the structure, just for information. This is the structure that we came up with. We have a general circle, and we have 4 circles that take care of communication, funding, and producing the materials for teachers and educators that we produce. And one that is the community of practice. And part of this action research is going to be around the fact that we discover that one of these circles actually doesn't have its place in our structure. And I think the action research was very, very important for the discovery of that. I didn't do all this alone, of course. We are 20 active members in the association. And within this 20, we have a few people who are maybe more interested in the subject of participation and democratic processes. And I actually asked 2 of them if they could start learning about sociocracy and develop something that would work for our association, because I think sociocracy also takes a lot of adaptation to different contexts. So we had the meetings, for example, and I started debriefing with members about the meetings. How do they feel about these meetings? And we have a little bit like 2 different emotions and opinions that are coming out. First of all, one thing that came in is that these meetings are very structured, and some people missed the old meetings where we were more informal, no rounds, etc., maybe more fun. Then one member said that clearly for her it worked better because she's kind of shy. She tends to be quiet, so it allowed her to be included. So the inclusiveness was there. Some had the concerns because we still have an executive board, so they didn't understand, and we still need to work on that, how the association executive board functions with having these circles. This is an issue. And there's a problem with visibility. Some members thought that the people who are more central tended to be elected in the roles of facilitator, secretary, etc. I found it very good that all these discussions could come out. And one person even said that the fact of saying I consent was very important for her, because it's a way of participating actively and formally into a decision. So this was the first cycle. I learned a lot about this cycle, and I got feedback again from my critical friend. And she was asking me to look at the resistances to the change and to see, considering the values that I had and the possibility that I was not always into power with, but sometimes going into power over, to look at that. So is there a way to move forward where everyone feels safe, recognized, integrated, respected, and valued, taking into consideration everyone's different rhythms and needs? I actually realized that from the first questions that I had, I probably was not quite, if you remember the spiral that was going in this direction and some little bits going into another direction, this was a change of direction for me, because I actually realized that although I had really worked in the first cycle on my expressing my feelings, being patient, etc., I actually found out during this cycle that the problem was more about fear. the urge to have everything perfect, some fear that people would not commit to what they said they would do for the circles to move forward. And this fear urged me to save the situation. So this is where probably values of connection and participation were more important for me to focus on. And then the next plan was to slow down, accept others as they are, connect to love, and leave out the fear. So what happened? These cycles went on for about 6 months. So I'm just going to give some of the lessons learned. I'm not going to go into every single cycle. I hope that by these 2 cycles, you've understood how it works. But the question started becoming, are we doing the right things? And are we doing the right things right? And I started looking more specifically at certain meetings, and one circle had difficulties. So I wanted to understand also why that was the fact. We discovered that the general circle has the potential to centralize power. And this actually made us change the way we were working with the double linking, involving the lead link from each circle much more into what the general circle was doing and organizing. We also decided that the rounds in the meetings and the very structured aspect of the meeting needed to be mitigated, and we needed to make sure that the meeting stayed as a safe place for the communication in the group. There was also a question of what do you do when a circle is not finding its purpose? And this was something that was very interesting. We actually took out the community circle because we ended up seeing that the meetings for this circle were always a bit difficult. And we actually understood that the locus of decision was actually not within the association for this circle, but should be in the wider community. And so we completely took it out of the structure and gave it to the community. And now we have circles functioning in the wider community, but not within the association. Also, doing rounds is not what sociocratic meetings are about. It's about much more than that. And this is something that we all want to research. And this came as a realization for us that we should not fall in love with the tool, but really use the tool for all it has to bring and always adapting it. So that was an important realization. A lot of concepts came our way because we were 4 action researchers, and always when some questions arise, we're giving resources, things that we know, things that we find inspiring. Of course, Cartman's triangle came up in this discovery about the fear that was behind the reactions and the need to save the situation. So this is very close to the triangle that transactional psychology tells us about. If you're interested in Cartman's triangle, it's quite interesting to understand conflict and relationships. And also one of the action research brought in the chaotic path, which is Christopher Corrigan, I think. And it's quite an interesting theory that shows how between chaos and order, a group needs the space of freedom to have new collective learning and real-time innovation. And also we discovered a lot about the limiting beliefs that were oftentimes preventing groups from moving forward with what they wanted. So in the last closing comment, I would like to say that I think action research is a very necessary component of anyone who wants to engage with other people in sociocracy, especially within a transition context. And it's, at least for me, as important as permaculture and NVC in terms of ways of thinking our world. And that's what I hope to convey. The last 4 important findings that we got is the locus of the circle, finding the right, where the decisions are made, that I already told you. Safe to speak is very important for staying a learning organization. And that brings us back to mistakes are good and mistakes are important. Also dropping assumptions about other people and staying open to actually what we observe and perceive. And allowing for good and right work means people will know what to do. So stepping out of the savior position was an important thing too. If you're interested in action research and you think it could be useful for you, there's some resources here. Especially the first one here is a book that we wrote with Branko Bognar, the teacher I told you about, and it explains all the steps one by one. And also Jean McNiff's work is very easy to follow. That's it for the presentation. If you are interested in more, you can contact me. If you're interested in those cards, you can go to our website and download them. They're actually really nice to use with teachers. And if you have any comments or questions, I'll be happy to hear.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
This is Allison in Massachusetts. Just a question about when you first showed the survey. What was the survey about?
Okay. Do you see me now?
I see you. Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
This survey was about people's perception about my leadership style.
Okay. So is it okay?
Yeah, and they were quite surprised about receiving such a survey, especially my kids and my husband. So it's leadership style, but it's also like, okay, there's a decision to make. How do you think I'm acting when this situation comes up?
Yeah.
And a lot of people, didn't like, why are you sending a survey about yourself? But it's actually very important in action research that you're actually looking and observing data. So you need the data. You need to ask these questions to people.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was so struck by the integrity that that you're sort of asking this question of yourself, and of course the organization is asking it of itself collectively. So I'm really admiring of seeing that reflected. So thank you for your sharing. I'll stop talking.
Thank you.
Now.
If anyone else has a comment or something, a question.
I don't have a question, but it's Jessie Barber here. I have a comment. I loved your presentation. It was really fantastic. So much of it resonated with me. And I think that level of constant reflection was just so fantastic, and such an integral part of education and education itself, and especially educational leadership. And it was just so great to hear the way that you put things, and yeah, really inspirational. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessie.
Hi, this is Stephanie Nesselrode, and it just seems like your courageous approach to transparency is just amazing to put yourself out there like that. And I want to check out the work you do. And I'm just introducing the notions of circles into a community setting. So I'd very much like to learn from your approach and how you have people blending the face-to-face and the online. So I have lots and lots of questions. So I was just delighted to see you here in your energy, and just you're an exemplar of, don't think that the map is the territory, right? It's not the rounds, it's what the rounds are intended to do. And are we really doing that with the spirit we come forward with and all that kind of thing? So I'm just delighted to have found you in this setting, and so thrilled that this workshop brought us all together.
Thank you, Stephanie. Do email me, and I'd be happy to know more about what you're doing.